I'm a tall yet extremely skinny guy. I'm 21 years old. I was 20 at the time, and it was the week before the presidential election in the United States. I felt a lot of anxiety about the election as I live in Manhattan, and there are a lot of crazy people in that city who act as if the entire world is going to end over one simple election. So, feeling exhausted from both that and my university, I decided to visit my friends in Moscow. I'm half Russian and have an apartment in the city center of Moscow. I had never been in Russia while it snowed, and luckily during this time it was snowing. The city looked beautiful, and the vibe I had from the city was perfect. I felt so calm, safe, and the whole world around me just seemed so quiet. Unfortunately, I had severe jet lag and fell asleep around 5 p.m. Moscow time. My friend went home to get ready for her classes the next day. I woke up around 3 a.m. I just couldn't fall back asleep, so I decided to go outside and take a walk around my area while it calmly snowed. I walked around the dead, empty city in my district and took in all the beautiful architecture and snow falling heavily. I don't remember how long I walked, but I crossed a bridge and entered deeply into a neighborhood I wasn't familiar with. I thought it would be okay as I was in my district and sort of remembered the way back home. I eventually came up to this ginormous entrance of a block unit with a beautiful gate. The gate was opened, so I decided to step inside. It looked like a small little compound or something similar. If anyone is from Russia, they probably know what I'm talking about. Everything was dead quiet and the trees canopied in the square complex. To the right was an extremely tall building with a huge door. I peeked inside and saw a lightly dimmed lobby, typical Russian lobby vibe, with a blinking fluorescent light. I held push the door handle, and to my surprise it was unlocked. I entered the massive building and looked around. There were stairs wrapping in a square leading upward, a small typical Russian elevator, and to the right of the stairwell there were stairs that led down. The door at the bottom of the stairs was open. I don't know what came over me because I'm not one to venture alone, but as I stated earlier, everything felt so beautiful. The quiet vibe of snow-covered Russia had me feeling so peaceful, so I decided to just tiptoe down into the basement to take a closer look. I walked into the room with the open door and turned on my flashlight on my phone. I saw an extremely long tunnel. I couldn't see the end of it. I felt threatened by it and got extremely uncomfortable, so I decided it was best for me to leave. When I turned around, the only light that was entering the tunnel was from outside of the doorway. I saw a black silhouette standing in the door and realized it was the outline of a person. He was at least 5 inches taller than me. I would say he was about 6'5" and massive. My stomach dropped and my heart started beating so fast. He started to speak to me in Russian, but since my Russian isn't fluent, I didn't understand everything he said. "I'm sorry, I don't speak Russian," I said to him in Russian. "You speak English?" he asked in English. I said I did, and he asked me if I knew where I was. "No," I told him as my mind started to fill up with a lot of different scenarios, one of which with me having to run down this tunnel and getting lost to avoid him if he chased me. These tunnels used to be used for Red Army soldiers to move from one place to another during the war, he explained. This whole building used to be a bunker for Red Army soldiers. "Uh-huh," I said, just to show some interest, and began to move towards the left while facing him to try and get him to move out of the doorway. "This whole place is now apartments. I have one on the top floor. You should come see it," he said. "It's quite late and I think I should be going," I said. However, he grabbed my wrist with so much force, then led me towards the stairs to go to the main floor of the lobby. "I have a view you'll love." He called the small elevator, and if any of you have ever been to Russia, you'll know exactly what type of elevator it is, the type that can barely fit 2 people. He began telling me about how he just got back from Chicago, and that his husband loves Chicago as well. This is when I started panicking because, in my mind, there would be another man up there, and I would have 2 men overpower me. He had a massive studio apartment with only candles to light the room. There was a lot of tapestries dividing the room. With the candles and moonlight shining into the apartment, it created a super eerie vibe. I looked out his window and must admit, the view was amazing. I had a panoramic view of Taganskaya and of the Kotelnicheskaya embankment building. I then started looking for an opportunity to get out of there. "Where is your husband?" I asked. He looked at me and laughed. "Oh, he's dead." He then picked me up. "What are you doing?" I asked. He brought me into another room and began to touch me inappropriately. He ran his hand down my back and took my phone from my back pocket. I didn't realize he had done that because I was in a state of shock. This man licked me and said explicit things in Russian. I tried to pull away, but it made him squeeze and corner me even harder. After about 10 minutes of this, he told me to wait a moment. He went into his bathroom, and it was at this moment I immediately sprinted to the door. There were no lights, so I felt for my phone. To my horror, the phone was missing from my back pocket. My heart sank as I realized I would have to go back into that bedroom to get my phone. I darted back into the room and saw my phone lying on a couch he had next to his bed. I grabbed it and ran for the door. I unlocked 2 locks on one door, and when I opened that one, there was an outer door. I managed to get it open. Adrenaline was high as I ran. I didn't wait for the elevator. I went straight for the stairs. Running down the stairs seemed like an eternity before I finally reached the bottom. I practically leaped down a few steps to go out of the lobby. The door wouldn't open. I'm not ashamed to say, this is when I started sobbing and cursing. The thought of me having to go back into that tunnel to hide again from him scared the living daylights out of me. I had no choice but to accept that this is my reality at this point. Pulling myself together, I noticed a button and I pressed it. This disabled the magnet that holds the door locked. The monotoned beep it made was the best sound I have ever heard, and I rushed out the door into the snow. I have never understood why characters from a horror movie couldn't get away. They were always falling. But now, I understand because I just did the same thing. I stomped through the high snow leading to the main road, ignoring my lungs that were screaming for air. Only once I reached a bridge that led me to my street did I slow down. When I reached the safety of my home, I sat shaking in my bed for 2 hours before I told anyone about it.